Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Schnetsky. This week, we've got a special guest. We are joined by the CEO of VNDL Project, a consultant in the industry for well over a decade, my good friend Moody, who is filling in for Supplement Snoop for our usual Thursday banter session. Welcome aboard, man.
Hey, Robert, thanks for having me, buddy.
It's always a
It's
good
a
time
shame
when we get
Justin could.
together. And
Yeah, it's a shame Justin couldn't be here, but I'm
it
sure he's very
is.
busy.
And yeah, he is. And I want to put an end to the rumors right now. You know, Justin and I have kicked up some dirt the past couple of weeks on the podcast. He has not been abducted by the likes of GIFD Labs or any other company whose products we shit on the past couple of weeks. So Justin is safe and well and in his home with his wife. Everything is good. He just got detained with a few other things. So we will wish him well and see him back on the podcast soon. So
Well,
thank
I
you for
did send
filling in.
him on that Bang internship, so
Oh, we
maybe he's
did.
doing well. Hoping he's doing well.
Yes, Justin, our thoughts and prayers are with you as you attend your Bang internship for the week. Bring us back some unicorn juice, buddy, please.
And to be fair, I did stand you guys up one time, so it's only fair he does the same back.
Payback. All right, so next time I'll just ditch you two guys and y'all can handle the podcast for the week.
I was just thinking that, and I was like, how do we actually do that? Like, who would even lead the questions?
All right, man. So give us an update on what's going on with the brand, since you've been working on the behind the scenes on this for several months now, and you're sporting, for those people watching on video, you've got the VNDL cap on and the sweatshirt on. So what's up with the brand?
Brand's doing very well. We actually just got prototypes of the product made, so we have that in hand, so we can finally start doing that for marketing. So we'll be able to reveal a lot more about the marketing structure of the company, what the design is actually going to look like.
Mhm.
I think most people will find it's pretty original. It's very clean. The people I've showed it to have been very impressed with the quality of what we came up with. And to quote a person I met with last week, they said it really looks as good as it tastes, and that was my favorite part of that meeting. So yeah, the company's doing well. We actually met with a national retailer last week to discuss the option of the product, of course, and we're starting a bunch of more SKUs coming out. So ideally, within 6 months, I believe we'll have 4 SKUs more. So we'll have
Wow.
5 SKUs.
When is the official launch date of the initial run of products?
Hopefully Boxing Day, so December 26th, but you never know with customs.
You did have to drop a Canadian reference in here. We don't know what that down here in the States. Boxing Day. What the fuck does that mean? That's the day after Christmas.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forget that.
So along those, what is Boxing Day? Because I'm fairly ignorant of Canadian national holidays. So what is Boxing Day celebrating?
So Boxing Day is this weird holiday where, I kid you not, it's like our version of Black Friday before we started doing Black Friday as well. Like when I was younger, we didn't really have Black Friday in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It was only Boxing Day. And what would happen was, because Christmas was over, if you wanted to buy stuff, everything was going to be on sale. Massive sale. There's no rush anymore to buy it for Christmas. You can buy whatever you want. So
Yeah.
everyone, like in my hometown, Halifax, would
Mm-hmm.
just be up in the morning going wherever they think they need to buy stuff. We would go outside a Future Shop, which was owned by Best Buy,
Mm-hmm.
and people would be lining up from like midnight to get there at 6. So it was really our Black Friday. And then when Black Friday started coming to Canada, it killed Boxing Day. Boxing Day still happens, but Black Friday is arguably much stronger now.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Cool.
Yeah, so we had our own version of Black Friday as well.
Sweet. Awesome, man. All right. So then Justin and I usually go through the weekly list of topics or products we've been trying, but I think let's do something a little bit different this week. Let's talk about some industry trends, just to kind of get like a 50,000 foot view of the industry, since you've got a foot in as a consumer, as a consultant, and now as an upcoming brand owner as well. So I'd like to discuss what are some of the major trends that you've seen over 2019 that you think may be dying as we head into 2020.
Ooh, trends and that are dying. You
Yeah.
make this difficult, Robert.
I try. I gotta make it
It's,
juicy for you, dude.
when you said trends right away, I was gonna say obviously functional foods.
Mhm.
I think some of the companies have been doing pretty well with their influencers this year. I know we say this every year, are going to notice a huge decline next year, especially with the laws they're passing where you kind of have to state where your income's coming from. It's going to make it a lot harder to be an influencer properly. And then I see a lot of influencers starting to switch towards the model where they're actually charging per post instead of being exclusive.
Hmm.
So that might be going that route as well. So if you have a highly rated influencer, you kind of really want to lock them into a long-term contract if you're convinced of their value. Otherwise, once they're done their contract, why not do this?
Right.
Because these people will charge like $500 a post,
Holy shit.
and that's normal to them. And they'll post like say 3 to 4 times a month,
Hmm.
but then they'll do that for 3 or 4 other companies,
Gotcha. Wow.
and that's like on the lower end for some of them.
Yeah. Now, if approaches from the consumer's point of view, and if you've seen an athlete be with, 6 different companies in the span of, 3 or 4 years, what makes you even trust what that influencer is doing or what products they're trying to shill for the week or for the month, whatever, whatever the flavor of the month is, whoever's paying them the most? Wouldn't it seem to you that those people would lose credibility or influence among the people that follow them?
They do to a degree. Some of the ones that go up way too high lose that kind of influence because they also stop really engaging with their following.
Hmm.
They just post and expect the likes, whereas before, when they were much smaller and when they were micro influencers, they actually were responding to people, thanking people for posting, stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think it's also on the consumer's behalf a bit of a cognitive dissonance. They want to like the person so much that they're willing to just put up with whatever they're doing. Maybe they like what they do on the personal side of things. Maybe they like their personality. Maybe that person's aspirational to them, so they view what they're doing as a step up for them. It's really based on how the influencer actually words their job movement
Yeah.
and perception of the consumers. But no, I've definitely seen influencers move even more often than that and not really a big drop in their sales. But then you look at some companies that have had very long-term influencers who do just as great, if not better. They're not constantly going over retentions issues, stuff like that.
Hmm.
And their influencers have that much more credibility. They've been promoting the same brand for 5+ years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be more inclined to just, I'm not somebody that follows a bunch of athletes, or if an athlete recommended a product, that's not going to by default make me do that. I think in part because I understand how the ingredients work and what the formula means, but for approaching it from a consumer that doesn't understand what all the products do, and they will be a little bit more inclined to believe what an athlete's recommending or saying like that, or an influence, whatever have you. If they've been with a company for a long time, somebody like Scott Herman, who's been with BSN for almost like 10 years, if he's
Yeah.
recommending something, then from that consumer's point of view that may not understand the science side of supplements, I'd be more inclined to believe what he's saying than somebody that has hopped brands 4 times in 3 years, something like that. They've established a little bit more credibility and believability from, I think, that person's point of view.
Yeah, exactly. And when I've worked at brands before, you've had issues like that where people are always interested in working with your brand, and then you'll ask them what their favorite products are from your line, and they have no fucking idea what's happening. I'm just like, so you've never used them?
Nope.
And I'm not saying you have to have used them, but they couldn't even like be bothered to look through the profiles and tell me something.
Right. Yeah,
It's lazy.
they're looking for a payday.
Yeah, exactly. So for me personally, in terms of influencers, it has to be someone that actually wants to use my products.
Hmm.
If they don't want to, that's a waste of my money and waste of their time.
Correct.
Why even bother?
Yeah.
Because there will be people out there who are genuine, who are good, that will want to use your products. So why settle?
Agreed. One of the other trends we've seen this year is CBD. And it started, at late 2018, and this year there's CBD in everything. We're seeing CBD coffee now, CBD proteins, CBD pre-workouts, which I think is retarded and very, very dumb to do. What are your thoughts on CBD as a supplement? I know I've got mine, and I can rail off a few things, but somebody who's got a little bit more of science background than I do, what are your thoughts on it and its utility, if any?
No utility in the consumer market so far because no one makes the commercial dose that's actually the proper clinical dose. Um, what people don't realize at home is the clinical dose for CBD is usually at minimum 300 milligrams per setting. That's what they do in actual scientific studies. If you look at most consumer products right now, they offer you something like, say, 25 milligram caps, 30 servings, and it's like $80. How are you possibly going to get those 300 milligrams at a reasonable rate? Can't.
Yeah.
You would
And
literally have to be doing CBD isolates, and even then, that's not cheap enough unless you're buying like by the kilos.
mhm. And from what I've seen, some of the studies I was looking at just earlier this week, it's CBD isolates only got a recorded bioavailability of something like 13 to 19%. And at least in the study that I was reading, it referenced that. It may have some other studies may have found something else if they were testing it in a different species or something. But even at that, I mean, do you think putting it in a liposome or putting it with something like estrogen or bioperine may help, or is it better if it's complex with, more like a broad spectrum CBD oil as opposed to an isolate?
Full spectrum for sure.
Yeah.
The isolate's good if that's specifically what you want, but the nice thing about full spectrum is you get all those phytocannabinoids that actually do help. There's a bunch of them. People don't realize how many there are, and that's why you get the full spectrum effect. You get everything.
Mm-hmm.
So why not go for everything? So CBD isolate, I'd only really recommend to people, and again, I'm not recommending it, but if they're going to use it, the idea would be for some sort of specific idea, like maybe a topical, if you're doing it for some sort of joint pain.
Mm-hmm. Would its absorption be better as a transdermal application than going the oral route?
Liposomal, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fascinating. All right, let's move on to another trend that we've seen this year. Partnering with candy companies or ice cream companies or food manufacturers to release officially sanctioned flavors. So, we've seen it with Welch's grape juice. We've seen it with certain flavors of candy like Warheads, Smarties, other things like that. What are your thoughts on getting these officially licensed flavors? Do you think it does much for consumers? Is it something that you're interested in as a brand owner? And as a consumer, would you yourself be inclined to buy a product if it was an officially licensed version of a flavor?
Yeah, good questions. And again, a lot of them. So basically, my answer would just be ad hoc. Basically, I am in favor of these ideas. I do think they bring a little bit more innovation to the supplement industry in terms of flavor collaborations, because then you can show other areas of where you can get more confectionery that there is some sort of utility to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because think of how hard it was for the first company to convince some of these candy companies to even be willing to try these ideas out in something as niche as sports nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now we're seeing it pop up a lot more because there is a use and the companies are seeing that there is potential money there. I do like the idea because consumers will look at it as some sort of stamp of social proof. They'll look at it and be like, oh, Welch's grape juice made this flavor. They must really like this company. It almost gives them that sort of Welch's grape juice okay seal.
Mm-hmm.
Because why else would Welch's team up with them? Because you would assume they're doing some sort of due diligence and that they've talked to these people and they're probably reasonable people.
Yeah.
So I think it adds a little bit of respect to the companies from the consumer point of view. I have actually looked into it myself. It's just takes a very long time
To get the paperwork lined up with the manufacturers or the companies to get the flavors licensed to you, you mean?
Yeah, you literally have to contact the companies and talk to their IP lawyers. You'll talk to a trademark person. There's a bunch of people has to go through. So it's bureaucracy. So that's why it takes time.
Gotcha. Do you think
There's so many angles they're going to look at it, right?
Yeah.
Because then it has to, say if you're talking to like the North American team, after they okay it, it'll go to the worldwide team or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps escalating further and further.
Gotcha. Now, how would they go about accomplishing that? I mean, do they send their proprietary or their patented flavoring formulas to the flavoring house where the supplements are? They send their like a big bag of flavoring to the contract manufacturers where the XYZ company gets their products manufactured and they just dump it into the raws and blend it from there? Or do they send one of their own flavor chemists over to make the profiles authentic? How do you think, do you know how it's done, or what would your...
I do know how it's done, but it's
Okay.
specific to everyone's contract as
Mm-hmm.
to what the company's willing to put in, because you have to look at it from the point of view from the confectionery company. They are making money off this because you're paying them for the trademark and to use that, but putting in too many resources might not be worth it to them.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some that have them out there with their own flavoring, with just kind of like this seal of approval from the company,
Yeah.
and then some companies who actually contribute to the flavoring quite a bit.
Gotcha.
It's kind of a spectrum.
Do you think, as a whole, because I know the supplement industry in general, dietary supplements are viewed somewhat good, but somewhat bad by a significant portion of the population. That they're seen unscrupulous, or they're filled with chemicals and tainted drugs and all of this other kind of stuff. Do you think these partnerships and these licensing agreements help legitimize the supplement industry as a whole with the general public?
Yeah, it's again what I'm talking about when I say social proof. You see these bigger corporations that you personally trust for other foods, stuff that you don't see as controversial supplements because you trust them with your candy, you trust them with your juice, stuff like that. And when you see that seal of approval, it tells you that it can't be dangerous. Why would Warheads endorse a dangerous product?
Yeah.
They have a legal department. They would have looked at it. There's things you think about subconsciously, but it works. Like the first time I've seen those products, I was extremely enticed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I bought some. I'm a consumer like everyone else.
Yeah.
So I did buy some, and it was actually quite good.
Interesting. I'm still waiting for a brand to release a bourbon flavored pre-workout or protein shake, or an old-fashioned inspired pre-workout flavor.
Shake would be great if it was like a bourbon cake.
It would be, yeah.
Something to really, because it can't just be bourbon because people will puke, I can imagine. But if it was something like a bourbon cake, like a rum cake, something like that, maybe you'll get attention with that like slight aftertaste of it.
We've seen, all right, so a couple of brands have made a name for themselves as being suppliers of quality single ingredients. I've been a fan of S&S over the years, and I know they do a lot of bulk ingredients. We've seen a few other brands enter this space, supplying single ingredient supplements. Do you think that may be a trend that the industry is heading towards, more customization from the consumer's point of view and less full-blown formulas?
No, formulas are always going to be king. It's the selling feature. It's the opportunity you get as a brand or as a company to really highlight what you want to offer your customers. So think of it this way. Why would I want to make 6 single ingredients and hope they sell well when I can make a product with these 6 ingredients explaining why they're so fantastic together? It's going to sell more. I think people are going towards making these lines, and this is something we've done before at a previous brand I worked at. It helps with brand completion. A lot of consumers these days like to buy their products from just one brand. They'll be like, this is my favorite brand, and then they'll hope they make everything, and they'll only buy outside of that brand if they don't make it. But if these brands offer these products, you get the brand completeness. People are just going to buy all your stuff. They might not be SKUs that you want in terms of margin, but it's in terms of keeping out your competitors.
Gotcha.
Because most of them aren't going to make you money. Fish oil's not going to make you money. Protein's not making you money. They're not making you money, but you get that shelf space. You get the add-on buys from people who are buying your products. It adds up. Yeah.
Why don't contract manufacturers just sell direct to consumers, or a lot of them? Not contract manufacturers, but I guess the ingredient houses. So why can't Compound Solutions open up a purchasing wing where they can just sell like 100 bottle capsules or 100 capsule bottles of something like Vaso 6 or Teacrine, or Nutrition 21 could do the same thing with nitrosogene and so on and so forth. Why don't we see more of that from the actual nutraceutical houses? Why do they sell these bulk ingredients to supplement companies, and then we have to pay the intermediary to the supplement companies, and they get their little piece of the pie?
So they actually do sell them to people, but they will sell to people as a private label product. So it'll be pretty much either the single ingredient, or some private label products will be stock formulas that they use themselves, and they're able to give you better pricing on those because they've already made them. So you could buy like conceivably 100 yourself if you wanted as a consumer. You could just buy the one like you could obviously like other supplements. So it doesn't really answer your question, but they do sort of do that. At the same time, there are also CMs out there that have their own brands. They just don't disclose it. So people are still selling stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's widely advertised or talked about that, if I wanted to go buy Vaso 6 or S7 or something as a consumer, I'm like, obviously I've got relationships with a lot of these nutraceutical places, as you do, to where we can call them up and say, hey, I'm thinking of formulating a product, or I want to see what this ingredient can do, and they'll usually kick several samples our way, which is very generous
Yep.
of them. But I'm wondering
Which
why they don't.
actually does help out. It actually has helped me decide about ingredients before, whether to use them or not use them.
Yeah.
Even just looking at how it colors. Like there was an ingredient I really liked once, but I couldn't use it because it colored very, very poorly. It stained so badly. I was like, we can't use this.
Do you want to say which ingredient that is or not?
No, but it was quite good. It works on nitric oxide, is all I'll say.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Yeah, I wonder, because there's so many of these bulk ingredients out there, and oftentimes it seems like you have to go get them through a brand instead of getting them through the actual ingredient supply
Because of
houses.
logistical work they'd have to do, they'd have to hire salespeople to sell these products as well.
Yeah.
On top of having salespeople who are trying to sell the raw material, it'd be like you'd be doubling your business size basically.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense then. All right.
Like, sorry, your business like force.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that makes sense. I'd like to turn now to some nootropics discussions, if you're up for that.
Yeah, I'm down.
Huperzine is by far the most widely used acetylcholinesterase inhibitor on the market.
Yep.
But we've seen some other ingredients pop up. They've got galantamine that does some stuff. Actioline is a new one that's surfacing. And there's even a few ingredients that have mild acetylcholinesterase inhibiting effects like that, like rhodiola, for instance, has some. What are your thoughts on the alternative acetylcholinesterase inhibitors compared to huperzine, or something like Salastris paniculatus?
Honestly, inferior. I don't see the need unless you're trying to be creative and stand out. Huperzine A is not that expensive. It works very well. You can microdose it. You can dose it very easily. It's not a hard thing to source either. So the other ones, it's really depends on the formulator, depends on what they want. And I should mention galantamine is not legal to use.
Well, yeah.
So, yeah, it does work very well though, but it's not compliant. The FDA has even sent letters out to people before, because Smart Powders used to actually sell it, like pills of it.
Yeah.
And people don't realize it's a scheduled drug. So, yeah.
So it's not compliant with that. So we shouldn't be seeing it in formulas.
Yeah, but it's the supplement industry.
Yeah,
do what they want.
Everybody will get by with something. So,
yeah.
Are there any new ingredients that you've seen that are particularly intriguing? As we recently discussed a ginkgo biloba supplement on the podcast, and I've come across another one called Citrapeak, which is made by Prinova, which is basically a version of hesperidin that's been shown to enhance some vasodilation properties. I'm just wondering, are all of these new ingredients coming?
Cool. I like hesperidin quite a bit. I've actually used it before in a product, an estrogen product actually, to help with joint pain.
Really?
Because people don't realize how much of an issue joint pain is when you reduce estrogen. Yeah.
So hesperidin has some anti-estrogen properties too, is what you're saying?
A little bit, but it also helps with joint.
Interesting.
What
I wonder is, do these
think of the first company I worked for and look at their active AI product, and you'll see it there. I think you'll like the formula.
Okay. I will go check that after we get off of this podcast. What I'm getting at is these new ingredients that we see. We'll see various nitric oxide boosters, and they may work along the same lines of ingredients that we've already got in the industry. Is there any need for those ingredients? Do you think they can be superior to ones that currently exist? So, we've got various different seed extracts and tea extracts and all of these things that work off of stimulating eNOS enzymes in the body. Do you think that we need 6 different versions of a product of ingredients to do that, ultimately do the exact same thing?
No. I'll actually give you a good analogy for this. This is a very popular phenomenon in pharmacology. It's called evergreening, where if your patent's almost over, you find something very, very similar to your molecule. It can even be an enantiomer of it, maybe just a different chiral center where it's pointing anything. And then suddenly all you have to do, and this is the only burden of proof, is it's as effective as what's currently on the market. It doesn't have to be more effective, and then it'll be approved as long as it's not dangerous.
Yeah.
Same thing with the supplement industry, it seems. You have these ingredients that already work, and they're great, they're fantastic, we all know them, we all trust them, but at the same time, we're all using them. You need to stand out a bit, so that's why I think people are doing that. But I don't think it's a huge benefit unless it's actually helping with costs. And at the same time, you're returning that cost back to the consumer. But people don't do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of these trademarks to me seem, some of them I know are patented, but some of them are just trademarked ingredients. Seem like they're just ideas for people to kind of build money out of consumers with like fancier extracts of stuff we've all used before that didn't have that much promise when we used them.
Gotcha. One thing that I've always concerned, so nitrosogene is a nitric oxide boosting ingredient, a super form of arginine. It's got an inositol stabilized arginine silicate. And it, enhances arginine in the body, which is going to boost nitric oxide levels. Same time, citrulline and citrulline malate will do that too. What I'm wondering is, will we ever see a study that is going to basically compare them head to head? So we'll see, a 1.5 grams of that versus, a full 6 gram dose of L-citrulline. And then why don't we hear much about the cognitive benefits, if there are any at all, from L-citrulline, since it does enhance blood flow? We hear about it in exercise performance and improving blood flow and cardiovascular health, but why haven't we seen much of its cognitive benefits?
There actually is a study out right now. It just came out within this month showing nitroglycerin is actually more powerful than citrulline.
Is it given a quality dose of citrulline too?
Yeah. So it's basically a dose by dose comparison, and obviously you have to extrapolate whatever way you want, but it was a decent study. So shockingly, someone did actually test this. And the funniest part was Nutrition 21 wasn't who commissioned the study. They just didn't even know it was happening.
Huh.
Yeah, so it's one of those weird times where your ingredient is being used and you just supply it to someone.
Yeah.
And you didn't actually pay for the study. And to me, it was hilarious because that's great PR for them.
Oh, yeah, and they didn't even have to fund the study.
This is an independent study done by someone else they didn't pay.
Oh, I guess put on your thinking cap, and if you had to put a very educated guess on something, why do you think nitrosogene is more effective?
So why do I think it's more effective?
Yeah.
That I'm not sure. It's fascinating to me the silicate actually makes arginine effective. I know it's also packed with inositol, but inositol I've used it in grams before.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I have actually seen studies as well with inositol enhancing the profile of other things, including I think it was either garlic or onion for fat loss. So that does actually make sense to me, that application. The reason I don't think citrulline actually works for cognitive benefits is it's just an intermediary idea of the Krebs cycle and urea. But the problem is, it's not a problem, but nitroglycerin is different. Acts completely different. And there are actually cognitive benefits. They actually have 5 papers technically now about cognitive benefits of their ingredient. They have the 4 under nitroglycerin, and then they have the 1 right now under New Level.
Right.
So basically, if you use New Level, you can actually use their other claims from their 4 other studies.
Right. And do you think they just created the trademark New Level name just so that they could expand it maybe to the gamer market and the nootropic space as well? Or do you think we'll eventually see the nitrosogene name kind of phased out and New Level will take over?
No, I think they'll do both.
Okay.
I think it's smart to do both. Nitroglycerin now is something that a lot of people like for NO properties. It's not as popular as some of other ingredients, but it's because it's a little expensive.
Hmm.
That's why people aren't using it as much because it's expensive to use the 1500 milligrams that you need.
Yeah.
But they basically were able to make one ingredient have two different categories and segments of populations to get towards. That's a
Hmm.
great idea. I can't imagine they step away from that, especially just introducing a gamer nootropic. And I know they actually have a second study in the works. I've talked to them about it.
Hmm.
So they're funding more research into it. So definitely not abandoning either one of them.
Yeah. When the brands fund the research, does that make you cautious about its results and interpreting them?
Uh, yes and no. I think we talked about this before, but it really depends on the people and depends on the methodology, depends on the stats, depends on the design of the study, depends on the type of acknowledgement, depends on what kind of input the people paying for the study had into the study design,
Hmm.
um, how much oversight there is. There shouldn't be much.
Yeah.
So that's the key thing.
Okay.
And then whether any of the people on the investigating team are employed by them or not.
Right.
I've seen papers before where they don't mention that in the conflict section, even though they do work with them. If you look them up on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
So ethics is a funny subject with some people.
Gotcha. How expensive? Because so obviously, from a brand's point of view, you can save a ton on shipping weight of product if you switch to something like nitrosogene, which is 1.5 gram dose instead of 8 grams of citrulline malate or even 4 grams of L-citrulline. So I mean, obviously, a 2.5 or a 3 gram, 4 gram difference might seem small, but when you're shipping thousands and thousands of units, that'll add up to a huge savings in terms of shipping weight.
Still less than the price.
That's what I was going to ask, is how
Yeah,
expensive is nitrosogene compared to something like L-citrulline?
much more expensive. Also, citrulline is not that expensive right now.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say the price, but it's
Yeah,
not terribly expensive. Tariffs did make everything go up,
right.
but that was a few months back, and things are stabilizing now. So citrulline is not cheap by any means, but it's definitely not comparable to nitrosocene.
Hmm.
That's much more expensive. Also, I'm gonna butcher that every time I pronounce it, so just bear with me.
Oh, that's fine.
I've
Is that...
literally never said it out loud before. I've only ever typed it.
It works, man. What about some of the other more prominent vasodilating ingredients? So, cost-wise, something like Vasodrive AP versus Vaso6 versus nitrosogene. How were those all priced? You don't have to give specific prices, but from what you've seen as a brand owner and a formulator, how do those prices compare to each other?
I can't talk about that because it'd actually be breaking NDAs that I've signed with all of them.
Oh,
Because whenever you talk to a supplier, you
yeah.
have to sign an NDA, which means you can't really discuss the actual pricing.
Okay.
So that's why I didn't want to discuss pricing about anything. Um, they're all premium ingredients. Some are definitely more expensive than others, but yeah, I
Okay.
definitely can't say.
No, I mean I've heard
But
from, because I haven't seen much of the actual pricing stuff. So I've always wondered. I've heard from people when they get the prices of the ingredient says, well, that's too expensive. We don't want to include that in the formula. Whenever I've pitched them, formulas where they ask me to put together a few things, but I've never seen the actual cost. I'll just hear that, oh well, this is too expensive. So that's what I was trying to gauge. How much more expensive is it
there's
compared to
another
some of
issue
the
you have
other stuff?
to bear in mind here too that they probably don't mention to you. It's the MOQ as well.
Hmm.
So it's minimum order quantity of how many kilos they're gonna have to buy.
Yeah.
So some ingredients will actually just some people will just literally not sell you below 20 kilos.
Hmm.
So
That's gonna be a
if it's
big investment.
expensive and it's 20 kilos and you only need 3 kilos for your first run,
Yeah.
you can see why some brand owners are like, "Are you kidding me? I don't want to buy 17 more kilos to possibly eventually use."
Right.
And that's actually where you see some companies kind of buy raws together.
They'll chip in
If they
for it, so
use,
two brands will
yeah, if they
join in on
use,
an
yeah,
order.
exactly. Kind of split the cost that they're going to use the same ingredient. Very rarely happens because people don't really help each other out, but it eventually it does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Interesting. All right. Yeah,
what
I'm
else?
surprised that you said brands will go together on ingredients because, as you and I both know, and Justin is all too aware, that brands are very territorial in this industry, and they're very isolationist to a spot of almost being I don't know. I won't use the adjectives that are coming to mind because I don't need any more nasty grams.
Yeah, you'll be getting some letters in the mail.
Yes, yes, and I'd like to keep my bank account just where it is right now. I don't want it to go down anymore.
Yeah. Um,
Oh man. All right. Let's jump back to the nootropics. Lion's mane. We've seen
yeah.
it. You've used it in several formulas. I really like the ingredient a lot. We've both written, extensive articles on what it can do and the power that it has. Um, do you think it offers any acute benefits, or do you think it's more systemic thing? So does it serve any applications in a pre-workout setting, or should it be in like a daily mental health kind of supplement? Or
I think it
mental
works in both.
productivity supplement, I guess is a better way to phrase it.
I think it works in both.
Mm-hmm.
Acutely is very, very minor, but if you add some ingredients to kind of highlight it, and again, I'm not talking about synergy. I don't believe in synergy. But you can draw out some effects from ingredients by using other things with it. So I'm not using the excuse of using lower doses. Still use things properly, but you can really make it shine in an acute setting if you do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, saturation based in the sense that you should be taking it long term. Think of stuff like Bacopa. You have to take it long term.
Mm-hmm.
I would say you should just be taking it long term anyway, but acutely it does have some benefits.
Yeah. Are you a fan more of the fruiting body powder form of the supplement or the mycelial derived form? If not, and then as consumers, half the time
Won't
you'll see.
comment because I have a product coming out with one of these in them.
Okay, then we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Do you think that?
But you'll get my answer then.
Okay, well that works. Should companies be forced to label where they're getting it from? And because very often we'll see something like lion's mane powder 10-1 extract, lion's mane powder 8-1 extract, lion's mane 403,000 to 1 extract. Does that mean anything from a consumer's point of view? And then how can consumers know if it's not listed on the label which source of either the fruiting body or the mycelial are they getting the actual powder from?
So it should actually say on the label, and to be compliant, you're supposed to say on the label what part of the plant it comes from. If you remember looking at my labels, it actually has right after the name what part of the plant it comes from.
Right.
You're supposed to be doing that. If you look at some of the companies I worked for before, they do the exact same thing. So it shouldn't be ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
If it's even just whole mushroom powder, it should just tell you that right on the label. It shouldn't be ambiguous at all. The extracts are a funny topic. Could really mean anything. In theory, it's supposed to be, it took 100, say, grams of this to make this one concentrated gram of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it must be super, super powerful and potent. But it depends with the starting material. What if it was the shittiest part of the plant and you just grind it up and make 100-1 of nothing?
Yeah.
That's still nothing. Hence why the part matters.
Correct.
Then you'll have an idea what the extracts are doing. So for example, Long Jack 100 is called Long Jack 100 because it's Tomcat Alley 100.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an extract 100-1, but
Yeah.
that actually does matter because they extract the proper part 100-1.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
So that's the thing. A lot of companies themselves don't even know where it's from.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of send a message to who they're getting their quotes from and be like, I would like to use this this ingredient, and then they'll get a list of options and possibly how expensive they are, but most manufacturers won't tell you the cost per ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of just give you a quote and they won't give you a breakdown because they don't want you to know where they're making their money.
Yeah. Which nootropics, if any, do you think should be taken daily, and which ones are best reserved for maybe just a few times a week?
Daily, I'd almost say most of the acute ones that I really like ALCAR, tyrosine, stuff like that. You should also be taking Bacopa daily, lion's mane daily, if you're going for a long-term benefit, because those do have long-term cumulative benefits is the thing that people don't realize.
Right.
Yeah, so those I'd use every day. Stuff I wouldn't use every day is some of the stuff that are a little bit more exotic, like noopept, stuff like that. You should be using it every day.
Hmm.
Phenylpiracetam, shouldn't be using it every day. Stuff that I think should be common sense. You shouldn't use it every day, but people use them every day.
Right.
And because if you're going to use those ingredients, and I don't even like them myself, you should use them for when you really need that attention,
Hmm.
and not as an everyday thing. If you literally can't get attention every single day, there's a much bigger problem at hand.
Yeah. So don't take 500 micrograms of huperzine every day with 1,200 milligrams of alpha GPC and 50 milligrams of noopept, is what you're saying?
Probably not a good idea.
Before we hopped on this call and we started recording, you and I were having an interesting discussion about some of the neuroprotective benefits of ALCAR, which is an ingredient we both love. It supports the acetylcholine pathway, and I thought that would make for some divine discussion on the podcast. So I'll phrase this from the context of which I was picking your brain about. So in the afternoon, sometimes after a long day of work, I will pop down to the local watering hole and order an old-fashioned, or I'll make one here at the house. And earlier that day, I'd say probably 2 or 3 hours prior to that, I had used a nootropic that included some noopept in it. And I had also added some bulk ALCAR to it as well. Now, noopept and ALCAR both, affect the cholinergic pathways in the body. So my question to Moody was, since he's got a pretty thorough understanding of neuroscience and brain chemistry and all that, I said, does alcohol potentiate any of the effects of noopept and ALCAR, or reverse, does noopept and ALCAR potentiate any of the effects of alcohol? Because I had entered into this flow state where I ground out like a 2,000-word article in the span of an hour, which is twice the rate of what I usually produce in an hour. So what are your thoughts on that, Moody?
Definitely possible. Noopept's one of those really weird things that a lot of people have individual differences with this one. That's why I've never actually used it in a formula myself. That's also why I was saying not to use it every day.
Yeah.
Some people have great times on it. Some people have a nightmare on it. It's something that actually boggles my mind. It's not as bad as yohimbine in terms of people really being decisive, but I see enough division with people that it's something I try to avoid. So I can definitely see why you could have had that reaction, because I've seen people have some crazy reactions on this thing.
Yeah.
And I actually countered to Robert when we were talking earlier about how ALCAR has a similar effect with alcohol in terms of being neuroprotective. So again, I'm not suggesting you drink ALCAR and then drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Sorry, take ALCAR. Do not recommend these, please. I'm once again saying it. Please do not combine these two. But in theory, based on in vitro work, it actually protects the blood-brain barrier permeability from being too porous. So in theory, it helps also with the transporters. So if you were to take ALCAR and go drinking, you're not technically causing as much neuronal damage as you could be.
Yeah, based on what the in vitro research is saying.
Yeah, and it was actually quite good research. Methodology is fantastic. They had so much detail. They had imaging scans, everything, man. It was a great thing.
Sweet.
So yeah, I was mentioning to Robert, this is something I actually presented once when I was younger, because I actually quite liked this. And at the time, I worked for a supplement company, and I discreetly brought up a source for ALCAR.
So if we were to formulate a hangover supplement, would ALCAR be a good fit in there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the utilities where it shines in best is the day after.
The day after, yeah. 1 to 2 grams, the usual dose that we see where it's used everywhere else. Yeah.
Honestly, with ALCAR, more than 3 grams is kind of a waste, like a day.
Yeah.
So at some point, plus you eventually start emitting a fish-like odor. I'm not kidding. If you look up people who take too much ALCAR, it becomes an issue.
Weird. What is that causing that? Is it the acetyl group getting metabolized into some like acetaldehyde or acetone or something like that, or what is it?
I think eventually a downstream effect of choline.
Okay. Huh.
The same thing technically happens if you have too much choline.
Weird.
Yeah, no, look it up. People talk about it. It's actually really
ALCAR
funny.
and fish odor. All right, let's
Yeah, even look up LCLT, stuff like that. Like you'll see some weird stuff.
yeah. Yeah, people have very weird reactions to supplements. I know last time me and Justin were on the podcast, y'all were talking about GABA and the depressed breathing rates that some people are experiencing, and then the cognitive fatigue some people feel when they supplement with too many BCAAs and stuff like that. It's the more I hear and the more I interact with people, it's very interesting to hear like the inter-individual differences that occur when with taking dietary supplements.
Yeah, and like what I was just talking about, literally, it's believable to me because there's so many people talking about it. I'm like, this can't be a coincidence. This can't be this many people just like coordinating on this elaborate plot to make people think ALCAR has this effect. It can't be imagined to me. It can't be psychosomatic because that's a weird thing to pick up on.
Yeah.
And most of them are commenting that others have told them they smell like it, and that's how they become aware of it.
Hmm.
So it wasn't. So it's not even them being hypochondriacs and being like, I think I smelled differently. It's realistically like people telling them, and they're like, really? And they're like, oh shit. So what am I doing differently? And usually they're taking absurd doses of stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, I guess I haven't OD'd on any nootropics yet because Sandy hasn't told me I smell like fish or anything. So that's a good thing. And she would be, there was no filter on that woman. So if she caught the slightest whiff of something, she would say, Robert, whatever the hell you're doing, change it. This isn't working.
Man.
Oh, good times. Good
She
times.
is just as not harsh, but she definitely likes to bust my balls a bit.
That's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for us guys. You need a confident woman that's willing to take you out at the knees every now and then.
Oh, she's absolutely brilliant and she's absolutely witty. That's what makes it so much funnier.
Is she involved at all with supplements? I'm not going to get too personal into her backstory, but does she do anything with supplements?
Ironically, yes, because of me talking to her.
Oh, perfect.
Because I will talk to her about stuff
Yeah.
or things that catch my eye,
Mhm.
or she'll see stuff I have lying around and then just inquire about them.
Yeah.
And I'll explain them to her, and she'll take some. And over time, she's actually learned about stuff. She'll actually look at a label sometimes and be like, "That's not dose high enough, eh?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." And it makes me a little proud. I'm like, "Look at you learning."
Justin and I were talking about this last week, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Milk protein isolate. Obviously, it's going to have both whey and casein fractions in it. Why don't we see that more in just in the consumer market? Because we see protein blends, and companies will put in a certain amount of whey protein, either as concentrate or hydrolyzed or isolate, and then they'll also add in egg and casein proteins. And sometimes they'll throw in extra milk protein isolate, but why don't we see many just pure milk protein isolate only formulas?
It's tricky. Costs, although it's not really that expensive.
Is it more
I think
expensive than whey or less expensive? Because it would seem like should be less expensive than whey since it's one step less in processing than whey.
last time I looked at it, it was more expensive than whey, but I honestly haven't looked at protein in a while because it's not a commodity I'm curious about.
Yeah.
And the pricing changes so much all the time.
Right.
I think the problem is consumer demand. How many people out there know milk protein isolate has whey and casein in it?
Mm-hmm.
Not many.
Yeah,
But there are big brands that, of course, use it as one of their primary sources.
right.
But it really depends on consumer education. Consumers don't know that. Whereas everyone knows about ON casein. You can just take your casein and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So companies won't sell something they have to educate people on.
Okay. And yeah, and I think whey has gotten such a huge swell of marketing and advertising behind it over the previous decades that I think in order to shift the tide and make people think that milk protein maybe isn't better, although there are a few studies showing that blends outperform whey alone, that you could, I guess, by proxy say that milk protein isolate would be better to...
About those.
You what? You what?
I've written a few articles about those.
Yeah. So I guess you could say that milk protein isolate would be superior to whey protein head-to-head based on the protein blend articles. I guess educating the consumer would be way too big of a task and to try and tackle the marketing machine that is whey protein.
Especially in a commodity market. Yeah.
Yeah.
it wouldn't be worth it to anyone unless you're the supplier.
Hmm.
And the suppliers aren't going to care.
Right.
People are still going to buy whatever they're producing.
Yeah. With proteins, we've seen more companies jump into the inclusion space where they start putting in a lot of these little cookie pieces, cereal pieces, what have you. Do you like those? Do you enjoy them personally? If you were to ever formulate protein for VNDL, would you consider doing that? And does it significantly affect the cost of products?
I did originally like it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely liked the company that first did it. I thought it was very innovative.
Yeah.
I tried their product out myself, and I honestly really liked it.
Yeah.
The one that had inclusions in it was a delight to drink and even chew on. Even the texture was great. I've tried some ones that aren't so great, and you kind of wish they just didn't have the inclusions. I think it's a novelty thing with people. I think eventually people aren't going to care as much about the inclusions because there's so many options now for the same inclusions. I can think of like 5 brands right now for Lucky Charms type of inclusions, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it depends because at the same time, we think of it as saturated, but even thinking 5 flavors of Lucky Charms is not that much when you look at stuff like chocolate, vanilla,
Mm-hmm.
strawberry. So it's not that big a deal, but we're getting it pushed in our face all the time on social media, so we feel like it's a more saturated market.
Right.
It does add up to the costs, and it can add up quite a bit depending on whether you get the trademark or not.
Mm-hmm.
To use whatever piece you're using, because basically you have to talk to some sort of supplier that does these confectionery things for food companies. Like, for example, you could talk to the people who sell the same things to Denny's,
Yeah.
and you can be one of their customers. So that's where you get it from, actually.
Oh, okay.
They're like brokers and suppliers.
Yeah.
So then if you want to use trademark, you have to apply to the company officially, and then the process I talked about earlier.
Interesting.
So that's why a lot of them you'll see they pretty much have like the cereal pieces that look identical to actual cereal,
Right.
but they won't straight out say this is Lucky Charms or this is whatever.
Yeah. Apple Jacks, XYZ,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not
But
Oreo.
if you look at it, you look just like I swear this is actually a Lucky Charm. It could be. It actually really could be.
Interesting. Yeah, as much as I think the products may resonate with informed consumers like you and me, and the people that we associate with, either in the supplement Snoop group or on the various supplement and bodybuilding message boards. I think your average consumer isn't going to be drawn to them nearly as much, and they're more inclined to go for the standard chocolate, vanilla, cookies and cream, maybe a strawberry. Although most companies' strawberries that I've had, I would say overall they're awful. There's maybe 2 or 3 that I've tried that I actually enjoy. Most of them are just terrible. Same with banana. Banana's
Did you
not good
try
either.
Ultra Peptide too?
No, I have not tried Ultra Peptide 2. I've
You
heard good. I heard
missed it.
such good things from who was that on the BB.com forum? Rob. Rob always was hyping
You
those.
missed it. They had some of the best protein flavoring I've ever had in my life, including up to now. And this was back in the day.
Yeah.
Their strawberry tasted really good, like a strawberry milkshake.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't taste synthetic at all, didn't taste fake. Their banana was great, and their banana didn't taste like Laffy Taffy. It tasted like real banana.
Yeah.
It was actually amazing. They were the ones that started with, of course, lemon meringue pie.
Mm-hmm.
Started introducing, I think they were one of the people that really started making really creative flavors.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, I saw recently that there was an apple cobbler protein released,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually something they were working on over 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, they were always ahead of the time back then in the proteins.
Huh.
But yeah, to circle back to what you were saying, I don't think consumers want to pay the prices that these companies are charging for this inclusion because they charge it as a premium rate.
Yeah.
So to people looking at it, they think to themselves, do I want to pay $10 to $15 more for a little bit of candy, but not any more protein?
Right.
Or do I go with this thing? It's probably less hassle too. A lot of different issues.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why it's an easy sell for consumers to just avoid the inclusions unless they really like the brand or they really like the flavor.
Gotcha.
or if
Yeah.
they're just curious and haven't tried it.
Right. Um, yeah, and I would even with the inclusions, I'd also lump like the designer flavors in. Something like lemon meringue pie, like you just mentioned, or strawberry shortcake, or anything else. I don't know if those fancy flavors attract enough attention or warrant enough sales. I would be curious, and I know a supplement company is never going to open up their books and say, "Here you go, Robert. Here's proof that our designer flavors outsell our chocolate and vanilla." I'm trying to think from the regular Joe's point of view. I think they may do it once every now and then, but I think month in and month out they'd be more inclined to buy the more standard flavors than the designer ones.
Really depends on the consumer. Some consumers will have a lot of different proteins lying around, so they
Mhm.
want to alternate so they don't get bored of some.
Yeah.
So this is the type of consumer these companies try to attract because they'll buy all the different flavors. Some people will buy some of these as a niche one to have that they're not taking all the time, but it's almost like a treat to them.
Hmm.
Um, Because yeah, I found with some of these, they taste great, but they're not something I want to drink every day.
Right.
Or sometimes they're a little too sweet or a little sickly, so I couldn't imagine having to choke this down twice a day.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where you go with your staple. But even with the staple stuff like chocolates and variations of chocolate stuff like that, there are some quite innovative ones that taste fantastic, like the PE Science chocolate peanut butter was amazing.
Hmm.
When it first came out, to me it literally tasted like Reese's Pieces, like the candy,
Yeah.
and it was delicious. Like stuff like that I really like, and it was a more innovative spin than just chocolate peanut butter because it actually tasted like candy to me.
Hmm.
Whereas before, it was always chocolate and some really synthetic tasting peanut butter that they kind of just chuck in there, and they're like, chocolate peanut
Yeah.
butter, enjoy it. I'm just like, I have 4 more pounds of this, yum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Let's see. Functional foods. You mentioned that earlier when we were discussing trends for 2019, and obviously, I think the inclusion of protein. You're gonna have protein packed M&Ms soon or something. Or they're gonna put
Yeah,
some
I
kind
saw
of
that.
claim
Even
on that.
Rolos.
Yeah, they're gonna start doing that. Um, do you think? I mean, I guess those products move a lot. I would assume so. If every brand is coming out with them, and people are finally starting to understand the importance that protein has in the
Plus, also
diet.
think of distribution networks some of these companies have than other companies. Like for example, there's a Snickers protein bar.
Hmm.
There's a Bounty's protein bar. I know they're making, I think, a Snickers whey protein, and there's something else they're making. It's by the Mars company, but I don't think they're making a Mars protein powder. But I know they're
Yeah.
making a Snickers protein powder. So clearly, these companies are seeing money there to be made.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. So they're seeing the tremendous growth in functional foods.
Yeah.
They're seeing that the supplement companies are making all the money in this, and they're thinking to themselves, why not?
Yeah.
Even think of Dymatize when Post bought them. Post is a cereal company, but they
Hmm.
bought a supplement company because they saw they could do a lot of business there, and they
Yeah.
really turned Dymatize around.
Hmm.
And Dymatize was always known as high quality, but now their formulas go along with their high quality.
Right. Yeah, they're always
They're
known
actually
for
much better formulas.
their isolates, and now they're getting the rest of the formulas come up. How far back was that Post acquisition? I forgot about that.
It's a number of years ago. It
Yeah.
was like what, like
See-
2013 maybe?
Oh, is that
12?
far back? I thought it was more recent, like 2015 or something.
I honestly can't remember. Let's see.
No. Yeah, I remember reading that Snickers was coming out with a protein bar and a protein powder, but I think it's only going to be Europe releases. I'm wondering why it's not going to in the States yet.
Those are European companies, that's why.
Well, yeah, and I figured that, but I mean,
Oh, I was right. 2013.
that's when Post bought them.
Yeah.
Well, then I need a Raisin Bran flavored pre-workout or protein powder from Dymatize. Then I love Raisin Bran or Raisin Bran Crunch.
I honestly don't know why. The odd thing is, Europe is actually ahead of us in terms of functional foods with protein. From what I've seen, that actually tastes fantastic.
That's what Shane was
Like,
telling me from Stack 3D.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's not kidding. I've actually, when I go to Europe, their functional foods are much better.
Hmm.
And I have a friend who constantly imports stuff from Europe,
Yeah.
and their protein stuff is absolutely delicious. Like, um, protein Oreos, protein whatever, and yeah, I'm not kidding.
Huh. Oh,
They
are they
have
using
those.
good forms of protein? Like, are they using whey or casein, or are they using lower
No, no,
quality
yeah,
forms like
no, they're
soy and?
using good quality. No, no,
Okay.
not only are they using good quality forms of protein,
Yeah.
the labels are very minimalistic too in terms of the ingredients. So if it actually hurts your stomach less because there's way less alcohol, like sugar alcohols,
Yeah.
way less problematic stuff. It's actually fascinating.
Then why the hell aren't those flavor technologies and stabilizers and shit working their way over here? Because there's still so many bad tasting protein bars on the market.
Honestly, sales channels, exclusive rights, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Even confectionery companies, they have disputes with other confectionery companies over territories and where certain products can be sold at a certain time.
Yeah.
It's absolutely absurd, but if you look at it. It's pretty funny.
Hmm. Interesting.
There's there's even confectionery products that are made by more than one confectionery company based on what country they're being sold in, and they're rival companies as well.
Weird. That's what I was wondering with the way trademarks and patents and IP work with that. Let's say German supplement company has a supplement like a pre-workout called Blitzkrieg. Can an American company come out with a formula called Blitzkrieg, or do those trademark laws expand across the pond?
Depends where the trademark is registered. Some people do a worldwide trademark. Some people just do a local trademark, like
Mm-hmm.
a German trademark.
Yeah.
If they just did their own country's trademark, it shouldn't be an issue unless they start doing business in each other's countries,
Yeah.
and it becomes an even bigger issue if they're somehow in the same industry as well.
Okay. Yeah, so if two supplement companies, an American one has started distributing over there in Europe, and the European company was already doing a business there, then there could be an issue
Yeah,
there. Okay.
then it becomes a huge issue. So that's why you should just avoid it anyway.
Yeah.
Because why would you limit where you're going to do business because you just like a name?
Right. Yeah. Along those lines, if you'd want your product everywhere, what are your thoughts on exclusivity? Signing just and releasing your product only in a certain outlet. So either going exclusive with GNC or exclusive with Vitamin Shop or bb.com only or a1supplements.com only or something. Any retailer you choose, you saying I'm only going to sell my product on my website and their chain of stores or their internet retail site. What are your thoughts as a brand owner?
I honestly don't like permanent exclusive deals. I don't like the fact that you single out retailers that could have been helping you before, people that have been helping you that you may not be supporting anymore. I wouldn't like to think that I could do that to someone, so it's not something I want to do personally. I think there's merit in it if it's time based, like say 3 to 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's through a national chain. That makes perfect sense. Who wouldn't want their brand to be picked up for 6 months by one of the biggest retailers in their country, for example? Like say, look at a company that just did that GNC exclusive recently. That's a huge way to get your products across the country nationally overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So there is merit in that. Me personally, I just wouldn't want it to be permanent. I'd want there to be some sort of time period where they reap the benefits of having that exclusivity for that long,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can market to everyone else. And to make them happy, you can even offer them an exclusive flavor, an exclusive version that has more servings. That's very common.
Okay.
It's very common to see companies offer some retailers products with like say 8 more servings than other retailers, and then you'll give the other retailer an exclusive flavor just for them.
Okay. Now with that, I'm glad you brought that up because was going to feed into the next question I had about the exclusivity thing. Do you think the retailers would get their panties in a twist because you went with their national competitor and you chose not to go with us? Or I guess you may have answered that by saying, well, then they'll come back in 6 months and say, we'll give you an exclusive flavor and you can have our line now, but we're still going to be in the other brand as well. Do you think that would ever alienate a potential partner for you by partnering with that company's direct competitor?
Really depends on the dynamics between the companies, depends on the people themselves working at these companies. It really shouldn't because it's a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, if it's a smart business being run and your brand is doing well with whoever else you went with, your brand will probably do just as well at their place. So why wouldn't they want to make money with you
Hmm.
unless you treated them very poorly during this decision making process? That's why I'm saying it really depends on the people involved. Also depends on the personality types of the companies involved, including
Hmm.
the different retailers and how they talk to each other as well.
Yeah.
If they're two big competitors and they don't like each other, it might not be a good idea to
Right.
even mention you met with the other one.
Yeah.
But honestly, I believe in honestly. To me, honesty is the best policy. I'm pretty
Right.
upfront with when I talk to retailers because I want them to be aware of, say, if there's interest from someone else, that there is interest, but I don't also want to make it seem like it's this auction or a contest, like
Hmm.
whoever goes first wins. Because I want I want the best deal, I want the best partnership,
Yeah.
I want the people who want to grow the brand, who actually believe in the ideas of what we're doing,
Hmm.
stuff like that that people really skip over quickly just because they want margin
Yeah.
or
Now,
exposure.
yeah. Now, I've heard different things in regards to brands. Some of them like the idea that putting their products in only a few select stores or only putting it in, mom and pop stores makes their brand not seem as common and maybe gives it that exclusivity tag or makes them seem a little bit more high end or ultra premium, and they're not a quote unquote Walmart brand or something like that. Um, do you think that actually helps a brand out if they restrict who they do business with, or does it actually elevate the perceived importance of the company in the eyes of the consumer?
There's two ways about it. I personally think restriction's a poor idea unless there's specific issues. You suspect they might be someone selling on Amazon to not respect your map pricing,
Hmm.
or someone else doing this, like another retail store doing the same thing. B could be some sort of counterfeit issue. So that's
Yeah.
why if someone's ever trying to buy a wholesale from someone, you should really do a thorough check on them. Kind of make sure they align with your brand values.
Yeah.
Ideally, you don't want to limit who can buy your products, but you also want to protect your brand and your brand's integrity
Hmm.
by not just giving it to anyone that has money.
Right.
So, in terms of customers, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
So, to me personally, I don't see the benefit of not allowing all customers to buy your product.
Yeah.
To me, I would want it to be as accessible as possible.
Yeah, and that's what I've always thought too. So, but I mean, everybody's got their own way of tackling business, and obviously, you can make money a bunch of different ways in the industry. It's always curious to see each brand owner's unique point of view on how to best approach which sales channels they work with and which ones they don't.
So, there's been companies before that have done this where they don't sell beyond, like, say, DTC or one other retailer.
Hmm.
And it makes people a little antsy because they're all waiting for when they eventually stop this, because they're going to have to eventually stop this because they're going to be too big of a company to only rely on that one or two types of income or revenue source.
Hmm.
So then when they start releasing to everyone else, they make a lot more money on top of the money they've already made. I always wonder, do they really think they made more money from the exclusivity period compared to just having had it sold everywhere? Did the hype and anticipation actually lead to more sales, or did it possibly lead some people to stop thinking about the brand and only the hardcore people stayed around,
Yeah.
like diehard fans?
Right.
Things to
Now,
think about.
yeah. When you put your product into a store, you're on the shelf with 400 other companies. From the brand side, is there anything you can do to the stores to help them push your product more than others? Can you incentivize them in some way? Because I guess every brand is going to try and do that, but is there any way you can kind of say, hey, if we're on the shelf next to XYZ company and ABC company, but you know that your formulas are superior to both of theirs, is there any way that you can get the retailers to maybe push your products more, or is it just kind of a free for all amongst all the companies that are in there?
There's definitely ways to get your product pushed more, but it becomes a free for all because everyone wants to do the same thing.
Right, that's what I figured a
You can
bit.
do demos. You can do, some companies notoriously do commission based on which products you buy,
Hmm.
which makes salesmen incentivized to push certain stuff.
Right.
Um, Honestly, depends on the retailer. It depends on if they actually like your product, if they think it's worth the time it takes to actually educate people. Because you could put up banners, top shelf stuff to really make it pop out, brochures, sample packs all over the place to really promote your product. That makes the retailer want to promote your stuff more. Retailers really appreciate stuff like sample packs, stuff like that can actually hand out to customers instead of just hoping they'll buy. And you as a company just kind of have to absorb that cost, knowing that it's probably going to lead to conversions eventually.
Okay. Fantastic. All right, buddy. Well, then I will get you out of here on this. Thank you again for joining us today. This was a blast as always, a wealth of information. This is a spot where you get to shamelessly plug your the VNDL project and everything else, where they can find you, what they can expect, and go away, my friend.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the camera, wearing the VNDL hat, got the VNDL shirt on. So yeah, so follow us at VNDL Project on Instagram. Sorry, that's at VNDL Project. So at VNDL Project. The website is www.vndlproject.com. Robert will have it somewhere in the biography, I'm sure.
Yep.
So we're releasing our pre-workouts around Boxing Day, which is, again, December 26th. But we'll have a bunch of SKUs out in the near future. Some of them will be stuff you guys have been looking forward to for, I think, for a while, seeing companies come out with decent products in these categories. And the rest will be arguably the best versions of products in their categories.
And yeah, and I will. I'm going to echo Moody's sentiments that he knows his shit when it comes to formulating. I've sampled his pre-workout, and I've enjoyed it very much. I'm wishing he sent me a few more samples of it because they were gone rather quickly. So yeah, and I don't say this about many brands, just in general, but Moody's always been a good friend. Super sharp guy, smarter than me, and knows what he's doing with the formula. So yeah. Definitely give his shit a shot when it comes out.
Robert, once again, thank you very much for having me here. Always good to talk to you, buddy. And I'll catch you later.
All right, man. Have a good one.
See ya.